Rigger Than Magic Academy is absolutely buzzing right now because Will Surfett actually pulled off a perfect score in all of his written exams. It's a massive achievement that caught all the teachers completely off guard. Even as they kept double-checking his papers, Will didn't make a single mistake. His scores actually smashed the record held by Lehana, who usually dominates the top rankings. This leaves Edward completely baffled. He's always written Will off as totally talentless, but now the kid actually has a huge shot at making it up the tower. On the flip side, Werkner Norgram is absolutely thrilled with the results. You can tell he's incredibly proud of the student he's been so patiently mentoring all this time. Even though Eliza Nosfert feels like Will's dream is practically coming true, Werkner is quick to remind everyone that their fight isn't over until every single exam is completely finished. While the teachers are busy debating, Will himself is grinding hard in the study room alongside Colette Loy and Rosti Naumann, prepping for their final exam tomorrow morning. Colette is super worried seeing Will's insanely packed schedule, especially since he literally just took down an Arberus monster yesterday without taking even a tiny break to rest. Despite being exhausted, Will is so incredibly grateful to his friends. Thanks to their help, he finally managed to secure all the credits he needed for the practical exam section. Rosti Naumann then reminds him that Will only needs one more credit from tomorrow's test to finally ascend the tower and keep his childhood promise. But because Will has been pushing himself way too hard with his studies, Rosti actually finds a grey hair on his head and immediately scolds him for overdoing it. Things get a bit heated when Colette gets mad at Rosti's teasing, but she instantly gets flustered and shy when they offer to let her help pluck the grey hair from Will's head. Somewhere else, Julius and Sean Ulster get called into the headmaster's office to receive some high praise for successfully defeating a floor keeper the day before. Instead of soaking in the glory, Julius and Sean are busy arguing over who carried the fight, which quickly devolves into them insulting each other's magical abilities. Fired up, Julius fires back by accusing Sean of basically just hiding in the shadow of Will, the very guy they've been looking down on this whole time. Meanwhile, Lehana and Wignall are strolling down the academy halls, chatting about how their credits are all set and how their skills are finally getting the recognition they deserve. During their chat, Wignall realizes that Lehana has softened up a lot. Back then, she always seemed so stressed out underneath that calm smile of hers. Wignall knows that this positive change in both of them is all thanks to Will's influence. He taught them that it's totally okay to fail a bunch of times, as long as you keep finding the courage to try. Again, Lehana totally agrees, admitting that she's finally learned how to channel her inferiority complex and fears into the exact courage she's been searching for. We also see Sean Ulster and Wignall walking down the academy corridor. What's really cool is how Wignall, who used to be so arrogant, is showing real growth by genuinely acknowledging Will Surfett's hard work as a fellow peer. Will's crazy dedication is no joke. Even when night falls, he's still totally absorbed in studying by himself, seeing that relentless drive. Colette drops by with some snacks so he wouldn't feel so lonely in that quiet study room. But when she gets there, Colette finds Will already fast asleep at his desk. Not wanting him to catch a cold after a long day of grinding, she gently drapes her cloak over his back. In the middle of that super quiet atmosphere, Colette's feelings just kind of overflow, and she actually gathers the courage to lean her face closer to the sleeping Will. Out of nowhere, Rosti suddenly pops up and startles the absolute life out of Colette. Rosti immediately starts teasing her, asking if she was seriously about to kiss Will while he was asleep. Panicking from being caught red-handed, a blushing Colette desperately tries to defend herself. She makes up an excuse, claiming she was just leaning in because she was super worried about Will's health since he's so exhausted. Deep down, though, Colette is genuinely heartbroken seeing Will constantly getting hurt just to chase his dream. That's exactly why she admits she absolutely hates the current rules set by the Magier Vanders. To her, Will's struggle is just so tragic because he keeps chasing after Elferia, who she feels is just waiting up in the tower without doing a single thing to help him out. Hearing her vent, Rosti just stays silent, staring up at the tower. Meanwhile, In another part of the academy, we see Elferia and Sarisa walking down a hallway as the vibe starts getting super tense. The tension spikes even more when Eleanor approaches Elferia and marks her, claiming the ice which only finally came out of hiding because the academy's situation is so unstable right now. But Elferia claps back effortlessly by reminding Eleanor about her defeat in the magic competition. That totally sets Eleanor off, making her furious at being humiliated in public like that. Right in the middle of their bickering, Yer shows up and tells them both to move aside. He coldly brushes off their argument as completely pointless and just a massive waste of time. Yer even warns them that the Terminalia ritual is about to start and the barrier is going to drop. He's practically itching to see which mages will actually prove to be useful when that crucial moment hits. Finally, the most dreaded exam day arrives. Just having Edward there as the proctor instantly makes the whole classroom feel suffocated and gripped by pure fear. Things get incredibly serious when Edward announces that the exam consists of just one single question. But here's the catch: whoever answers it correctly will instantly earn a full total of 6 credits. It turns out the exam question asks for the definition of magic using technical terms like source, connection, and manifestation. It's an insanely difficult concept to explain, even for the most talented mages. For the other students, it might just be a matter of putting the sensations they feel every day into words, but for Will Surfert, answering this technical question feels like an absolutely impossible hurdle to clear. As a result, Will can only stare desperately at his blank paper. All that book knowledge feels totally useless because he's literally never felt the flow of magic inside his own body. He starts to panic, feeling like his journey is about to end right here. His fear peaks as he realizes his massive dream of joining Elferia up in the tower could be completely shattered by just one cue. Stian. But suddenly, a childhood memory of Elferia giving him her genuine support flashes in his mind, that instantly washes away all his doubts. And Will starts writing down his answer with absolute determination. For Will, catching up to Elferia is like a miracle that feels so incredibly out of reach. Still, he chooses to keep fighting. Even though his journey often feels beautiful and cruel all at the same time, that conviction grows because Will truly believes that real magic is born from hard work. He's certain there's a massive power out there that can surpass any spell, as long as a person never gives up on their dream. However, that hope seems to get tainted, exactly like a single drop of black ink falling and slowly spreading across a crisp white sheet of paper. The tension totally explodes in the academy office when Werkner gets furious at Edward over the exam that just happened. He actually grabs Edward by the collar. Convinced that the question was intentionally designed to be impossibly hard, just to fail a specific student, Edward stays completely calm in the face of all that anger, arguing that his question covers the essential basics for any mage, but Werkner isn't having it, repeatedly accusing him of deliberately targeting one student with an impossible test. The situation peaks when Edward shoves Werkner to the ground. He coldly declares that someone who can't use any magic whatsoever simply has no place up in the upper tower. After that harsh move, Edward just stands tall with his back turned to Werkner, who is left slumped on the floor. It's like he's completely slamming the door on anyone trying to defend a talentless student. Sadly, the exam results end up proving Werkner's worst fears. Will's name is officially on the list of failing students. This automatically disqualifies him from his journey to the tower. Crushed by this failure, Will can only sit slumped alone on a park bench as night falls. He keeps beating himself up, feeling like he was just completely incapable of answering Edward's challenge. Sobbing his eyes out, Will clenches his fists super tight. In the dead of night, he just keeps apologizing to Elferia over and over again, feeling like he completely failed to keep their promise. Out of nowhere, Rusty shows up to comfort his devastated best friend. He gives Will a tight hug and promises that he'll always stick by his side, no matter how tough things get. Meanwhile, Colette, Lehanna, and Wignall are scrambling all over the academy trying to find Will. They're super anxious because their friend just vanished from the dorms right after the exam results. Dr. Opt But their search gets interrupted when Julius rolls up and starts mocking Will, calling him a total loser. He thinks it's completely natural for a student like Will to run away out of shame after failing so hard. Wignall is absolutely not having it and immediately points his wand straight at Julius. With a piercing glare, he warns Julius not to ever dare insult the honor of an elf's friend. At the same time, Shen, who's also there, looks visibly annoyed. His pride is stinging, not because of what Julius said, but because he just lost his chance to defeat Will fair and square. Finally, Werkner steps in to break up the commotion. He tells the students to head back and enjoy the Terminalia festival, promising that he'll personally take responsibility for tracking down Will. New Year's Eve finally arrives, kicking off the insanely festive celebration. The sky above the Academy Tower instantly lights up with gorgeous fireworks that paint the entire city in vibrant colors. Right in the middle of the hype, Claire takes on the role of festival broadcaster from up on her flying broom, full of energy. She hypes up all the citizens of Rigoden while introducing herself to the crowd. Laughing out loud, Claire even has the guts to call out Werkner and Edward by name through the magical projections coming from the flying orbs, scattered all over the city. Amidst the bustling night market vibe, a brown-haired student is spotted happily chowing down on food while daydreaming about being up on stage someday. At the exact same time, Wignall, Julius, Shen, Lehana, and Colette are seen taking a chill stroll through the city's increasingly crowded streets. The excitement reaches a whole new level when Iris greets all the citizens from the sky on her flying broom to celebrate Terminalia Night. She announces that tonight is incredibly special because they're about to renew the massive barrier that blankets their sky. Hearing that, Colette and her friends gaze up at the sky in absolute awe. But wait, down in the middle of the crowd, we also see Iris just standing there completely silent, hugging her history book super tightly. That history book actually holds the dark tales of the past, back when the world was trapped in total darkness without a single ray of sunlight, long ago. The very land they live on was completely devastated by the deadly attacks of the celestial host. Until finally, in the midst of that incredibly dire situation, 5 great mages led by Mercedes arrived to save the world, exactly 500 years ago. They managed to seal the sky and push back the enemy forces for good. It's that exact legacy that has the citizens still celebrating this historic moment, because the barrier created by the Magia Vanders has proven to be an amazing shield for them. Meanwhile, Colette and the gang continue their walk through the market, checking out all the unique stalls. But through her broadcast, Iris reminds everyone that this barrier can only last for a single year. Because of that, the giant seal absolutely has to be renewed routinely every single year without even the slightest margin for error. To keep the ritual secure, Raj is keeping a sharp eye on the situation from a rooftop. On another side, Iris also looks super busy checking her magic screens to make sure the ritual preparations are completely flawless. As a result, Logwell quickly gives Carriot the signal that it's finally time. Carriot immediately gets ready, gripping his sword to kick off the Sky Seal renewal ritual that the entire city has been waiting for. At the climax of it all, the 5 Magia Vanders appear all at once on a glowing platform floating high in the sky. Their epic entrance is instantly broadcast across the whole city through giant crystal projections that everyone is glued to. In stark contrast to the cheering crowds, we see Will and Rusty Nauman sitting quietly on a park bench watching the broadcast. Will just keep staring intensely up at the sky, whispering Elfaria's name super softly. Right at that exact moment, a massive beam of light shoots straight up into the night sky. Along with it, Iris calls out to all the citizens of Rigoden to raise their lights high to drive away any kind of evil. Responding to her call, Colette and the rest of the citizens quickly raise their magic wands, which start glowing brightly. Seeing all that crazy enthusiasm, Eren finally gives the order to kick off the core ritual of the night. One by one, legendary magic weapons from the elements of fire, water, lightning, wind, and earth start materializing in the air. Those epic weapons immediately surround the great mages who are getting ready on the ritual platform. Going all out, Eren, alongside Eltheria, Keriot, Zio, and Elena, combine their powers to chant a super high-tier spell. They finally unleash the Van des Terminalia magic to reinforce the world's protective barrier. As soon as the countdown hits 0, a massive wave of white light spreads out across the entire sky. Naturally, the whole city erupts into joyful cheers to celebrate the total success of the seal renewal ritual. Rigurden City instantly turns into a massive party, decorated with fireworks and thousands of lanterns floating up in the sky. Colette and Wignall are just completely mesmerized by the beautiful New Year's scenery that feels so incredibly peaceful. But that peaceful vibe suddenly turns absolutely terrifying when a weird purple symbol pops up right over the blue seal. Moments later, a creepy giant face emerges right in the middle of the sky as it starts turning an eerie purple. Realizing something is seriously wrong, Raj immediately springs into action to find the source of the disruption. Meanwhile, the city's residents, including Iris, are starting to get gripped by panic seeing the bizarre stuff happening up in the sky. Out of nowhere, a huge purple seal appears on the ground and spits out a massive winged demon monster. The beast instantly takes to the skies and starts mercilessly destroying the surrounding buildings. To make things worse, an army of celestial host monsters starts flooding the city streets, throwing the entire market area into total chaos. Explosions keep going off back to back, until the once peaceful city is literally getting swallowed by roaring flames. Right in the middle of the burning city, Mars and Headless are seen watching the absolute chaos from a balcony. They're laughing like maniacs, totally convinced that the Magia Vanders are completely drained of magic after pulling off that massive ritual. Mars whips out his black magic wand to kick the next phase of their evil plan into gear. On the flip side, Colette and the gang are just left speechless, watching their city get destroyed right in front of their very eyes. Only Will is still standing tall amidst the roaring flames, staying hyper-alert to everything happening around him. Meanwhile, Headless swings his wand and boldly declares that this party straight out of hell has only just begun. Will was absolutely shell-shocked when he saw a magical gate circle materialize in the sky, looking exactly like that terrifying incident he witnessed back on floor 11. Sure enough, a horde of skeleton monsters immediately burst out from an explosion right in the middle of the city, relentlessly chasing down the panicked citizens who were running for their lives. Seeing the absolute chaos, Large totally panicked because there was just no way Denalbaro's monsters from the deepest parts of the dungeon could impossibly show up on the surface like this. Right in the thick of the madness, Claire swooped in on her flying broom and immediately barked orders at Large to prep a counterattack as fast as humanly possible. To hold off the invasion, Claire unleashed her summoning magic, Cerados Guardianus, calling forth a swarm of mechanical guardians that swept across the city skies to battle the monsters. While letting the Guardians hold the front line, Large led his squad of fire mages, chanting their spells to wipe out the monsters in one massive, coordinated strike. The impact of the frayed Reckle fire spell resulted in a massive explosion, completely scorching the battlefield all along the city streets. Shen and Liana were left absolutely speechless, just staring in awe at how quickly the monster's surprise attack was obliterated by the sheer power of the Tar mages. Large felt a brief moment of pride for protecting the capital, but his confidence completely shattered the second he realized one monster actually survived the blast. Annoyed that the beast was still causing trouble, Large recklessly spammed his fire magic in a blind rage while constantly cursing at the creature. Tragically, Large got hit by an instant counterattack and dropped in a flash, making Claire realize their magic was totally useless because the monster could neutralize their spells with zero effort. Things got incredibly tense when Large was left lying there helpless, after his fire magic was effortlessly sliced apart by the monster's mysterious power. Meanwhile, Cauldron received a grim report that the Tau God forces were dropping one by one thanks to the attacks from that mysterious monster. Looking at the evidence, Cauldron suspected that these Midge-Slayer swords were being mass-produced by the exact same mastermind who crashed at students' training exercise back then. Even though the city was descending into absolute chaos, Cauldron strictly forbade the academy from sending any backup, totally convinced that the attack on the capital was just a giant diversion. Because of that, Cauldron ordered all her subordinates to stay focused on defense and maintain the security of the main tower. At the same time, the Magiavander members, including Elferia and Zio, figured out that the enemy's true goal was to strike while their magical power was weakened. Logwell tried to pressure Carriot into having the Magiavander step in to save the citizens, but his opinion was rudely cut off by Aaron. Aaron told Logwell to shut up and not make a move without orders, even going as far as throwing threats and insults at him right in front of the other members. Aaron firmly refused to let the Magiavander leave the tower, arguing that if the main barrier fell, the entire world would face a catastrophic threat. Without that barrier, a massive invasion would kick off and could literally turn the entire world's civilization to dust in no time. Outside the tower, the enemies were getting super annoyed that the Magiavander weren't coming out even though the bait was set, so they decided to just kick back and enjoy the chaos they caused. Meanwhile, Iris was heartbroken seeing the ruined city, so she recklessly charged right into danger to save a crying little kid on the streets. Without a second thought, Iris chanted her spell, Olumiris, unleashing a blast of light to drive away the monster right in front of her. Iris froze in her tracks when she saw Will Surfett standing tall, fearlessly challenging the monster amidst the ruins of the destroyed city. Before reaching this point, Will was constantly mocked and had to walk the school hallways all by himself, completely isolated from everyone else. But honestly, even though he used to hate his situation, Will was now dashing forward to slice through the smaller monsters with his glowing blue dual swords. Catching his breath while surrounded, Will tried to hype himself up to stop shaking, knowing full well that giving in to fear would only lead to more casualties. Seeing what was happening, Julius shouted out tactical instructions, telling Will to stay focused on targeting the enemies carrying weapons. On the flip side, Iris knew Will couldn't keep fighting solo forever, and right on cue, Erin's hologram popped up, giving her full authority to take action. Wasting zero time, Iris officially announced the lifting of the combat ban for the dwarves in Gordvir under the name of Mysterious Noah. Meanwhile, Werkner was literally on his knees begging the people inside the bar to lend their strength and help save their friends. As a result, Donnan was moved to action and immediately led the dwarven squad to rescue Will and the rest of their crew. Not wanting to be left out, Shen quickly took command, ordering the mages and students to protect the civilians amidst the madness. But things got incredibly tough when Leona was shocked to see her attacks doing absolutely nothing to bring the monster down, even after using magic enhancement. Once she realized the monster's weapon could literally erase magic, Leona immediately asked Colette to help her pull off a super reckless and risky plan. The situation grew even more desperate when Wignall's plant magic also vanished, making Julius feel completely hopeless and almost tempted to just run away. Thankfully, Shin stayed sharp, leading the frontline mages to keep firing off spells to hold back the increasingly vicious enemy movements. Shin kept pushing his teammates to fire non-stop so the monster would be cornered and forced to use other monsters as meat shields. Right at the perfect moment, Colette unleashed her Saint Viola magic to drop a massive statue straight onto the enemy trapped beneath it. The giant statue finally crushed the monster to pieces, but Julius was actually horrified because they had just destroyed a super important historical monument. After Wignall pointed out that physical objects without mana couldn't be erased, Leona immediately ordered the Earth Mages to launch a barrage of physical attacks. Kicking off the assault, Iris took charge and commanded the Earth Mages to rain massive boulders down on the enemy. In the midst of all that chaos, Leona kept screaming words of encouragement so her teammates would stay strong and turn the tide of the battle. It turns out this heroic display by the juniors was being watched from the sky by Claire, who was so impressed she gave them a perfect score. Down on the ground, the Tar mages started setting up defensive formations, even though they had to swallow their pride and rely on the dwarf squad's help. Finally, the moment they were waiting for arrived as the dwarf troops charged in to protect the territory under the Magia Vander's authority. But over on the other side, Mars and Headless, who were watching from a rooftop, were totally complaining because their weapon production plan got stalled. Because of that production failure, they were forced to fast-track their backup plan, even though it really wasn't fully ready yet. Without wasting a second, Headless started drawing a magic spell in the air to summon their deadliest secret weapon. Will, who was on high alert, suddenly froze when he saw a gigantic magic gate rip wide open, tearing through the city sky. Shortly after, a terrifying monstrosity named Devander emerged from the gate, instantly becoming a massive threat to everyone around. While the battle heated up on the surface, Finn managed to corner an injured mage inside a cave to interrogate him about the mastermind behind the Mage Slayer. With a mocking laugh, the guy actually spilled the beans that their only job was to lure the powerful mages into the dungeon. Realizing the surface was in extreme danger, Finn quickly finished off the mage with a hidden blade so he could rush back as fast as possible. Back in the city, Will was struggling hard to get up from the rubble, but Devander jumped straight down to keep hunting him. The two clashed in a fierce battle, but Devander's physical strength was so far beyond human limits that Will kept getting pushed back. From a distance, Claire recognized that the monster was Devander, a legendary floor 40 beast that had once slaughtered a whole generation of Magia Vander. Watching the chaos unfold, Mars and Headless just laughed in satisfaction, loving the fact that the monster they worked so hard to capture was now going on an absolute rampage. Will realized he had zero chance of winning a head-on sword fight, so he opted to keep running to lure the monster away. Unfortunately, Will had to stop dead in his tracks when he spotted a group of terrified students caught right in the path of Devander's deadly strike. In a totally reckless move, Will leaped in to block the giant sword to protect them, screaming at his peers to run for their lives. Tragically, the terrible positioning left Will wide open to a brutal barrage of attacks, sending him crashing hard into a building wall. But right before he got stomped, Darnan showed up out of nowhere and caught Devander's giant foot with his bare hands to save Will. As a result, the arrival of Darnan and the dwarf squad became the ultimate turning point for them to pool all their combat power and destroy Devander. The situation got super critical, prompting Iris to take command and order the troops to focus on the southern area to protect the mages. Little did they know, up on the roof, Mars and Headless were just watching with smug smiles because their Grandmaster plan was going perfectly. However, everything flipped upside down when Devander suddenly forced its energy core out, making Will instantly realize they had all walked into a massive trap. As a result, pure chaos broke out as the entire defensive line started losing control amidst the totally unexpected assault. It turns out Devander had this insane unique ability to absorb energy from other monsters, boosting its power to an absolutely ridiculous level. Facing this new threat, Claire and Iris immediately ordered an all-out attack, but a sudden explosion of purple daggers blocked the path of the dwarf warriors. Surrounded by those terrifying pillars of purple fire, Devander's body slowly mutated into a giant with bone wings that looked incredibly menacing. In its new form, Devander immediately went berserk, brutally charging into the dwarf warriors and smashing their defenses to pieces. Seeing this disaster, the enemies started bragging because the mage's magic was now totally useless, and even the dwarf warriors' raw strength meant nothing. In the midst of all that despair, Will finally figured out that the enemy was intentionally using this attack as a sacrificial ritual to power up their secret weapon. As a result, the mage forces were getting absolutely massacred, a grim reality that made Will start feeling like all his knowledge and physical skills were completely worthless now. Then Rosti arrived, and in that critical moment, a burst of water magic was finally unleashed to help activate Will's magic sword. Rosti even tried to help out with his signature water magic, but Devander effortlessly shattered that defense and injured Rosti incredibly badly. Refusing to let his friend go down like that, Will leaped high into the air and engaged in a brutal sword clash against the monster amidst the suffocating dust clouds. Meanwhile, in a dying state, Rosti begged Kiki to hurry and find Colette, promising that he would protect his master no matter the cost. Even after losing one arm, Rosti tried to push himself back up with whatever strength he had left, while Will grew increasingly frustrated facing a monster with such impossible power. It all peaked when Will was thrown so hard he smashed into a wall, and right as Devander was about to finish him off, Rosti stepped in, risking his life to be the ultimate human shield. In that exact second, Rosti's body shattered into particles of light, and this absolute tragedy sparked an unbelievable, explosive rage inside Will. In the midst of his critical, life-threatening injuries, Will's gaze suddenly locks onto the phantom image of Rosti. Rosti is just standing there smiling, softly whispering a promise that he will always be right by his side. But that comforting warmth only lasts for a fleeting second. The vision of Rosti slowly fades away into tiny particles of blue light, leaving Will completely bewildered, especially when his own hand unexpectedly starts glowing with that exact same radiant light. In a truly heartbreaking moment, those two glowing hands desperately reach out to grasp each other, but they totally shatter into countless pieces right before Will's eyes, plunging him into absolute, soul-crushing grief. Thank goodness for Professor Werkner. Just when Will's life is hanging by a thread, Werkner heroically leaps in, grabs Will, and manages to land them both safely on the back of a massive red dragon soaring through the sky. As they fly away from the blazing, ruined remains of the city, Will just keeps screaming Rosti's name. His voice is so full of pure desperation that it absolutely tears your heart into pieces. Meanwhile, things are getting incredibly tense among the Magiavander. Right in the middle of their super serious meeting, Zio abruptly shoots up from his chair, stubbornly demanding to dive straight into the battlefield all by himself. Boiling with absolute rage, Zio brutally mocks his fellow peers, calling them entirely useless for just sitting on watching people die. Even though Eren and Carriot try their best to talk some sense into him, he is just not having it. Even when they warn him that if the Magiavander fall, the entire city's barrier will completely collapse, Zio does not care one bit. Instead, he just fires back, cursing them out and calling them a bunch of cowardly mages. Carriot desperately tries to get Zio to be patient and wait until their magical energy is fully restored. But Zio is completely fed up and absolutely refuses to just cower in fear and do nothing. Left with no other choice, Carriot literally blocks his path with flaming arrows. Of course, this only fuels Zio's explosive temper even more, prompting him to fiercely challenge Carriot right back while unleashing his crackling yellow lightning magic. While the tension between the Magiavander is practically boiling over, the elf faction led by Elena chooses to stay completely silent, simply observing all this intense chaos from a safe distance. Seeing the battlefield situation getting increasingly dire, on top of her teammates constantly bickering, Elferia suddenly stands up from her seat, radiating a completely different, incredibly intimidating aura. She straight up demands that Eren immediately cancel his standby orders, but Eren, being as stubborn as ever, snaps right back and orders Elferia to back down and get out of his face. With absolute resolve, Elferia firmly declares that she is going out there to save the person she loves most, especially Will. She makes it crystal clear that she will do it even if it means she has to fight Eren himself too. Get past. Cutting back to the dragon ride, Werkner gives Will a harsh reality check. He reveals that the front lines have been completely decimated, and now this young boy is quite literally the one and only hope they have left. Tragically, Will is still deeply traumatized and just keeps blaming himself. He feels like an absolute failure for not being able to protect his friends, entirely convinced it is because he completely lacks any magical abilities. His frustrated screams only grow louder as he takes the blame for this entire catastrophe. It hits him especially hard since he is already looked down upon as a total failure of a student at the Magic Academy. Even though Werkner tries his absolute best to calm him down, Will remains completely, utterly broken in tears. He feels so incredibly isolated. Being the only person in this world who cannot use even a tiny bit of magic. Out of nowhere, right in the middle of this despair, Mars suddenly shows up with floating purple daggers. He has deemed Will a major threat, and is fully intent on slaughtering both of them right then and there. Without any warning, the city instantly transforms into a terrifying sea of flames, completely swarming with horrific celestial host monsters. Wignall actually gets trapped right in the middle of an ambush, but thankfully, Colette swoops in to save the day using her awesome Earthshield magic. Amidst all that insane chaos, Lehana sharply warns Colette to stay focused and not zone out. Right at that exact moment, the adorable familiar cat named Kiki suddenly pops up and dashes right past them. Sick with worry over Will's safety, Colette quickly scoops Kiki up in her arms. She desperately begs the little cat to guide her to wherever Will is. Even though the situation around them is spiraling totally out of control. On another front, Julius and Shin are fiercely holding their ground using their respective elemental magic, but in a shocking twist, Shin abruptly takes off, leaving Julius completely alone to defend that entire area by himself. This obviously makes Julius furiously angry. He is so sick and tired of feeling like he is constantly being treated as a convenient tool that his own friends can just pass around however they please. As the mayhem reaches its absolute peak, you can see Headless chilling on a balcony, thoroughly enjoying the widespread destruction. He then starts chanting a sinister purple spell to summon an overwhelmingly powerful monster. As a result, a massive winged demon monster rises from the shadows. The terrifying creature immediately takes to the sky, completely ready to spread even more devastating terror across every inch of the city. Claire quickly realizes how massive this threat is and immediately chases the winged demon straight toward the central tower. There is no way she is letting that beast endanger the safety of the mages stationed up there. But unfortunately, Claire gets brutally blasted by a super powerful wave of purple energy. The sheer force of the attack completely throws off her balance, sending her plummeting from her flying broom in the blink of an eye. Down on the ground, Professor Edward orders the dwarves to push forward into the city center immediately. However, Gina fiercely protests this command, feeling like her people are just being used as disposable meat shields. Even though Gina rightfully questions such a ridiculously dangerous order, Edward stands his ground. He firmly states that sacrifices absolutely must be made if they want to save the entire city from total annihilation. That heavy tension breaks for a moment when Gina is nearly ambushed by celestial host monsters. Edward actually throws himself in to save her, taking a nasty injury to his own back in the process. Edward honestly feels like his own life is worthless right now because his magic is no longer effective against these enemies. That is exactly why he is demanding the dwarves to give absolutely everything they have in this crucial moment. Hearing Edward's unwavering resolve, Gina's heart finally softens. She quickly gets back on her feet and rallies all her comrades to charge right into this incredibly dangerous mission towards the city center. Meanwhile, Colette and Shin are sprinting at top speed, smashing through monsters in a desperate search to find Will. Shin even has to physically grab Colette's arm to stop her from recklessly charging ahead all by herself. Out of nowhere, a celestial host monster sneaks up right behind Colette. She tries to block it with a magic shield, but tragically, her magical bracelet snaps and breaks at the absolute worst possible moment. That terrifying moment marks the absolute collapse of the city's entire defense line. Casualties start piling up fast because the mage forces simply cannot hold back this overwhelmingly massive monster invasion any longer. Even Rose is shown completely cornered, and all alone on the blazing streets, clutching her wounds. She is just desperately hoping to see Colette one last time before everything truly comes to a tragic end. Somewhere else, Mike is relentlessly shouting evacuation orders, directing everyone toward the south. He keeps amplifying his voice with magic, until his throat is so raw and painful that he literally cannot speak another word. Seeing the situation go from bad to worse, Lyral and Gordon, who originally wanted to run away, finally decide to stand their ground. They feel they owe their lives. And they make this brave choice right as a gigantic monster looms up behind them. Right after swooping in to save them, Eliza gives her two students extremely strict instructions to get as far away from the battle zone as possible. She firmly insists that those two are the only ones capable of pulling off this rescue mission, without a single ounce of hesitation. Lyral and Gordon salute her and immediately dash off to fulfill their duty, but with the endless swarm of monsters flooding in, Eliza is finally forced to unleash her incredible blood magic. She is determined to make absolutely sure that not a single one of those creatures can lay a finger on her precious students. While Eliza is fighting tooth and nail, on the other side of town, Emma is absolutely devastated when she finds her friend lying totally helpless. She just keeps sobbing uncontrollably while holding onto her friend's hand, which has already gone completely cold. The situation on the ground is turning into a total nightmare. There are reports that Edward has been severely injured, and to make matters even worse, the Academy has completely lost all contact with Professor Werkner. Seeing things spiral so far out of control, Headmaster Cauldron knows they are in deep trouble, especially after getting reports that a massive horde of Denoboros is already advancing straight toward the city center. Up in the watchtower, Iris is really starting to lose hope. But just as she is on the verge of giving up, completely surrounded by her magical monitoring screens, Will suddenly walks right up to her. Without saying much at all, Will immediately grabs a massive sword, fully gearing up to take decisive action right in the middle of all this absolute madness. Meanwhile, looking down from a high rooftop, Headless is laughing maniacally at all the destruction. He is feeling incredibly smug because his Grandmaster plan to incite a massive riot has been a total success. Amidst the roaring chaos of the city, Will finally locates Professor Werkner, who is lying completely limp with a horrific chest wound caused by Mars's vicious attack. Fighting through unimaginable agony, Werkner actually apologizes to Will. He tells him that right now, Will is the only person he can rely on to save this entire city. Hearing that heavy request just plunges Will deeper into despair. He feels completely useless because he has zero magical talent, and he is still brutally blaming himself for Rosty's tragic death. But in a truly shocking moment, Werkner pulls him into a hug and whispers a massive secret. He admits he has been lying this whole time. Will actually can use magic. And it is a magic that will bring hope to absolutely everyone. Tragically, right after whispering that mind-blowing secret, Werkner breathes his very last breath. This leaves Will absolutely shattered, screaming at the top of his lungs as he mourns the beloved teacher who just died right in his arms. Right in the thick of this overwhelming grief, Finn suddenly appears right in front of Will. He offers a tiny glimmer of hope, explaining that the silver light can cut through absolutely anything. He even convinces Will that Werkner can still be saved, as long as they can get his heart beating again. Hearing this, Will just looks totally confused and stays completely silent when Finn tells him to get up. He seems entirely lost, just staring down at Werkner's lifeless body and his arms with a look of pure disbelief. Finn then steps closer to completely shatter Will's flawed understanding of what true resolve really means. He even lets out a laugh, realizing that Will has had it all wrong this entire time by thinking magic is strictly limited to controlling elements like fire or wind. Finn keeps pushing him, explaining exactly where true willpower comes from. He demands that Will stop doubting himself and start screaming his heart out so he can finally force his paralyzed body to move again. Will briefly feels like that advice is way too childish, but Finn immediately snaps at him with intense harshness. In his eyes, it is completely impossible for anyone to change the state of the world if they cannot even manage to change themselves first. Finn reminds him of his true identity, that Will is essentially a sword striving to become a magic wand in this world. Because of that, He orders Will to remember exactly where he came from and stand back up. Reaching his hand out, Finn urges Will to grab that sword immediately. Even though his hands are still shaking violently, Will finally starts to tightly grip the hilt of his blade. Keeping up the intense mental pressure, Finn challenges Will to shout out the name of the magic spell hidden deep within his heart using his absolute loudest voice. The second his power limiter shatters, Will violently swings his sword and unleashes a gigantic slash of pure energy. That brilliant white light explodes across the entire city, completely obliterating every single skeletal monster in its path. As a result, absolutely everyone from Lahanna and Wignall to the ordinary citizens is left totally speechless, just staring in awe at that mysterious light. On the flip side, Iris is watching from the sky as that blinding radiance wipes out the monsters one by one, while Elferia smiles with absolute pride seeing Will's incredible transformation from afar. Shen is still out there fighting for his life. He keeps spamming his fire magic to hold back the endless onslaught of monsters that just keep coming. Even though he gets knocked back and suffers severe injuries, Shen flat out refuses to run away. He feels deeply that he absolutely cannot lose to Will, the guy who has always fought so incredibly hard. Despite everyone treating him like he was totally useless, surrounded by roaring flames, Shen finally admits to himself that he is actually super jealous of Will, but also incredibly amazed by him. This whole time, he has been pushing himself to the absolute limit just so he could stand proudly on equal footing with everyone else. Screaming at the top of his lungs that he will never lose to Will again, Shen unleashes a massive fire magic attack to completely incinerate the monsters standing in his way. But with perfect timing, Will swoops in to block the monster's counterattack, and right now, Will stands tall and proud as a true Maga Blade, his eyes burning with an incredibly fierce and sharp gaze.